Privacy is often misunderstood. In a culture where transparency is glorified, where people are encouraged to be real and share everything, we've blurred the line between authenticity and vulnerability. But here's something most people miss. Being private doesn't mean you're hiding something. It means you understand the value of what you have, and you choose carefully who gets access to it. Too many people confuse privacy with secrecy. They think that if you don't broadcast your every thought, struggle, or success, then you must be holding back. But there's a quiet strength in restraint. Power lies not in what you reveal, but in what you reserve. Think of the most influential people you admire, leaders, thinkers, visionaries. They don't overshare. They speak with purpose. They understand that not everything needs to be said out loud. And more importantly, not everyone deserves to hear it. When you keep certain parts of your life private, you're not being distant, you're being deliberate. You're choosing what belongs to you and what belongs to the world. You're building a foundation that isn't easily shaken by other people's opinions, judgments, or misunderstandings. And that's where your power begins, because here's the truth. The more people know about your personal life, the more they feel entitled to it. They begin to weigh in, to criticize, to gossip, to assume. And slowly, without you realizing it, your life becomes theirs to interpret, comment on, and dissect. You lose control of your narrative not because you gave it up entirely, but because you gave too much of it away. Privacy is how you protect your peace. It allows you to work through things internally before the world tries to define them for you. It gives you space to evolve, fail, reflect, and grow without the noise of outside voices. When you share too much, especially before you're ready, you open the door to influence that isn't always healthy. You begin to second, guess yourself, you start seeking approval, and before long, you're not living for yourself anymore. You're performing for an audience that was never meant to be in the room. Let's be clear, being open is not the problem. Vulnerability is powerful, but only when it's purposeful. Only when it's earned. True vulnerability doesn't come from telling everyone everything. It comes from choosing the right people at the right time for the right reasons. Privacy gives you the ability to build relationships on trust, not exposure. When people don't know every detail about you, they have to get to know you. They have to earn your story, and in that process, real connection is born. Not because you handed them your life on a silver platter, but because you invited them in with intention. You also begin to develop something rare in today's world, mystery, and mystery isn't manipulation, it's magnetism. It draws people in, not because you're withholding, but because you carry yourself with depth. And depth is powerful. Your story, your thoughts, your feelings, your experiences, they're sacred. They're not content for public consumption. They're the blueprint of who you are. And giving that away too freely doesn't make you generous. It makes you vulnerable to misuse. Privacy is also a form of self-respect. It says, I know my worth, I know what matters to me, and I know that not everyone is meant to hold my truth. That mindset gives you emotional independence. It allows you to stand strong in who you are, regardless of external opinions. The moment you stop sharing everything is the moment you start discovering what really matters to you, without needing applause, approval, or acknowledgement. That's when you begin to lead your own life, not follow someone else's expectations. So no, privacy is not secrecy. Secrecy is rooted in fear. Privacy is rooted in strength. Secrecy hides, privacy protects. Secrecy isolates. Privacy empowers. Secrecy is reactive. Privacy is intentional. And when you begin to live with that kind of intentionality, You no longer feel the need to explain yourself, prove yourself, or expose yourself just to be accepted. You become grounded in a deeper kind of confidence, a quiet kind, a real kind, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is power. We all want to be seen, to be heard, to feel like our experiences matter. That desire is human, but the way we chase it in today's world has changed. Somewhere along the way, we began mistaking oversharing for authenticity and attention for connection. Oversharing is not the same as being vulnerable. It's not the same as opening up. It's often a loud cry for approval, an attempt to fill a void with likes, comments, reactions, and digital sympathy. We believe that by exposing our deepest wounds, our unfiltered thoughts, or our rawest emotions to the world, we'll somehow feel more connected, more validated, more alive. But connection doesn't come from how much you share, it comes from why you share. There's a difference between saying, "I'm going through something," and saying, "Let me show you every detail of my pain so you'll see me, feel for me, and tell me I'm okay." One is a courageous step toward intimacy. The other is a quiet plea for external reassurance. It's not about healing, it's about being seen. And here's the danger. When you seek validation through oversharing, you hand over your sense of worth to people who haven't earned it. You give strangers the power to define how you feel about yourself. You create an emotional dependence on feedback that was never meant to guide your growth. Oversharing creates a performance. You start measuring your authenticity by how many people resonate with your struggle. You start crafting your pain in a way that will be applauded, not understood. And slowly, your story becomes less about truth and more about attention. This is not connection. Connection is built in silence, in small moments, in earned trust. It's built when two people sit across from each other and choose to be seen, not perform to be noticed. True connection is rooted in patience, not exposure. Oversharing, on the other hand, bypasses that process. It jumps straight to the deep end without the safety of trust. It assumes closeness where there is none. And as a result, what you receive isn't always compassion. It's judgment, misunderstanding, or worse, indifference. There's nothing more hollow than exposing your truth and being met with silence or shallowness. And yet, we keep doing it hoping that maybe, this time, someone will understand. Someone will say the right thing, someone will make us feel whole, but that need for validation, when not met with genuine care, only deepens the emptiness. It's not that we shouldn't share. It's that we should choose to share wisely. Not everything sacred needs to be said publicly. Not every emotion needs an audience. Some things need time. Some things need reflection. Some things need healing behind closed doors before they're ready to be revealed. The most connected people don't share more, they share better. They understand that true connection requires discernment. It requires emotional intelligence. They don't weaponize their vulnerability for sympathy. They offer it when it adds value, when it builds trust, when it means something. There's also a certain dignity in restraint. A strength in knowing that you can hold your story until it's ready to be told, not for likes, not for validation, but for purpose. When you stop needing people to validate your pain, you begin to validate yourself. And in that self-validation, you find clarity, peace, and control. The truth is, the more you seek validation, the more you lose your identity. You begin tailoring your story to match what others want to hear. You become reactive to their opinions instead of grounded in your own truth. And connection that is built on approval is fragile. It crumbles the moment that approval disappears. So the next time you feel the urge to overshare, pause. Ask yourself, am I sharing this to connect, or am I sharing this to be seen? Is this coming from a place of wholeness, or from a place of need? Because when we begin sharing from a place of security instead of desperation, we don't just connect. We build something lasting, something meaningful, something real, and maybe that's the point. Real connection isn't loud, it's not public. It's not built in the comment section or on a timeline. It's quiet, intentional, human. Oversharing won't bring you closer to people. But understanding yourself and choosing to share only what adds value. That's where real connection begins. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a kind of connection that doesn't ask for validation. It stands confidently without it. There is something sacred about your inner world, your thoughts, your emotions, your dreams, your past. It is where your story lives. It is where your beliefs are formed and your values are shaped. And yet, in today's world of oversharing and instant gratification, we are constantly encouraged to give that world away to anyone willing to listen. But the truth is, not everyone deserves that access. Access is a privilege, not a right. We forget this, often in pursuit of connection or approval. We rush to open up, thinking vulnerability will bring closeness. And yes, vulnerability does build trust, but only when it is offered in the right space to the right people for the right reasons. Otherwise, it becomes a transaction. We share our pain hoping it will be respected, and too often it gets judged, misunderstood, or even weaponized. Your inner world is not public property. It's a place that should be protected, not exposed to anyone who simply asks. Because when you invite the wrong people into your personal space, you allow them to influence it, to shape your confidence, your mindset, and sometimes even your identity. Think about how many times you've shared something deeply personal, only to feel regret afterward. Maybe the person didn't respond with empathy. Maybe they minimized your feelings. Or maybe they walked away with a piece of your story and didn't handle it with care. That's the danger of offering access too freely. You risk placing your most vulnerable self in untrustworthy hands. Not everyone is emotionally mature enough to hold your story. Not everyone will understand your journey. And that's okay. It's not their job to. It's your job to protect your peace, to guard your growth, and to decide who earns the right to see you fully. This isn't about building walls or living in isolation. It's about boundaries. Healthy, intentional boundaries. When you understand your worth, you don't hand it out like a business card. You don't seek connection by exposing every scar. You allow people to earn your truth not because you're hiding it, but because you honor it. People often believe that being open means being completely transparent with everyone. But real openness means knowing who to be transparent with. It means recognizing the difference between someone who is curious and someone who is safe. There's a difference. Curiosity is passive, safety is earned. Your energy, your time, your story, these are resources. Precious ones, and just like you wouldn't let a stranger walk through your home without trust or intention, you shouldn't allow someone into your mind or heart without discernment. Because once someone is inside your inner world, they have influence. Influence over how you see yourself. Influence over what you believe, and that influence can be inspiring or damaging. It depends on who you've let in. The right people, the ones who deserve access, will protect that space. They will listen without judgment. They will honor your vulnerability without trying to fix or critique it. They won't use your past against you or gossip about your pain. They'll sit with you in it. They'll respect the privilege of your trust, but the wrong people will see your openness as weakness. They'll take your transparency as an invitation to manipulate, criticize, or control. And slowly your inner world becomes a reflection of their noise, not your truth. This is why self-awareness is so important. You must know what parts of your story are sacred. You must recognize your own emotional limits. And you must build a filter, not to block people out, but to ensure the right ones get in. We don't protect our inner world by being silent, we protect it by being intentional. By knowing that not everyone we meet is meant to walk with us. And that's not coldness, it's wisdom. It's maturity, it's strength. There is a quiet confidence that comes with selective sharing. It says, I know who I am and I don't need to prove it to you. That kind of confidence doesn't shout. It doesn't overshare. It holds space for the right people and lets the rest move on. So the next time you feel the urge to open up, pause. Ask yourself, has this person earned access? Have they shown consistency, compassion, and trustworthiness? If the answer is no, you already have your answer. You don't owe anyone your truth. You choose to share it with those who have proven they can hold it gently. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you honor your inner world, with wisdom, with boundaries, and with power. We live in a time where boundaries are often misunderstood. People hear the word and immediately think of separation, distance, or even rejection. But that's not what boundaries are about. Boundaries aren't about keeping people out. They're about honoring what's within. Respect doesn't happen automatically in any relationship, personal or professional. It's not something you can demand, and it's not something you can fake. Respect is built, and one of the most powerful ways to build it is by knowing where you end and someone else begins. That's what boundaries are. They're the invisible lines that define your values, your limits, and your identity. So many people are afraid to set boundaries because they don't want to seem rude, cold, or distant. But the irony is, the absence of boundaries actually leads to more misunderstandings, more resentment, and more disconnection. When there are no clear lines, people assume, overstep, and take liberties that leave you feeling drained or disrespected. Boundaries are not barriers, they're bridges. They allow others to engage with you in a healthy, honest way. When you communicate your needs, your limits, and your expectations clearly, you're not shutting people out. You're showing them how to love you better, how to work with you better, how to respect you better. Think about the people you respect the most. Chances are they have clear standards. You know what they will tolerate and what they won't. You know where they stand. You trust them, not just because they're kind or wise, but because they're consistent. That consistency comes from boundaries, from knowing who they are and what they stand for. Without boundaries, you're not in control of your life. Others are. Your time, your energy, your emotions, they all become subject to other people's expectations. And over time, you begin to lose yourself. You say yes when you mean no, you accommodate out of guilt. You overextend yourself trying to please everyone. And the worst part, you start to resent the very people you're trying to be close to. Boundaries are how you stay connected without losing yourself. They allow you to show up fully while staying aligned with your values. They teach others how to treat you, not by demanding respect, but by modeling it. Every time you honor your own boundary, you send a message. I matter, my time matters, my peace matters. And when you do that consistently, something powerful happens. People start to respect you more. Not because you're rigid or inflexible, but because you have clarity. Because you carry yourself with intention. People may not always agree with your boundaries, but they'll come to understand them. And over time, that understanding turns into respect. It's also important to remember that boundaries are not static, they grow with you. What was okay for you 5 years ago may not be okay today. That's not selfish, that's self-awareness. You are allowed to evolve, and your boundaries should evolve with you. Setting a boundary doesn't mean you don't care. In fact, it often means you care deeply about yourself and about the quality of the relationship. Because when you allow people to overstep without consequences, you're not protecting the relationship, you're quietly breaking it. Resentment builds, Communication breaks down, and what could have been healthy becomes toxic, all because a boundary wasn't respected, or even set in the first place. So many conflicts, whether at work, in families, or in friendships, stem from unspoken expectations, from people assuming what's okay and what's not. Boundaries are how you make those expectations visible. And when expectations are clear, relationships become stronger. There's less guessing, less walking on eggshells, and more trust. And yes, setting boundaries can be uncomfortable, especially if you've never done it before. People might push back. They might accuse you of changing or being distant. But discomfort is not a sign that you're doing something wrong. It's often a sign that you're doing something right. You don't need to apologize for setting boundaries. You don't need to explain them in endless detail. You just need to stand by them with calm confidence. The right people will understand. The wrong ones will fall away. Either way, you're better for it, because boundaries aren't walls. Walls are built from fear. Boundaries are built from clarity. Walls shut people out. Boundaries invite the right people in. And when you live with boundaries, you don't just protect your peace. You invite respect into every corner of your life. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you build not just better relationships, but a better, stronger, more grounded version of yourself. There is a stillness that very few people talk about today, a quiet place where clarity lives, where peace is cultivated, and where true confidence is formed. That place is silence. In a world that never stops talking, tweeting, posting, reacting, and demanding more of your attention, silence can feel foreign, even uncomfortable. But it's in that discomfort that the greatest kind of peace begins to take root. Too often, we confuse noise for meaning. We believe that if something isn't shared, it didn't happen. That if people don't see our progress, our pain, or our success, it somehow loses value. But the opposite is true. The most meaningful things in life don't always need to be broadcast. They need to be lived quietly, honestly, and deeply. Silence allows for something powerful, perspective. When you step back from the noise, when you stop performing for the world, when you simply be with yourself, without filters, without opinions, without audience, you begin to hear your own voice again. And that voice is where your peace lives. Exposure, especially in the age of social media, often promises connection. Share your story, it says, tell the world everything, it suggests, but behind that message is an unspoken consequence. The more you expose, the more you invite others into spaces they don't always know how to respect. The more you share, the more you risk misinterpretation, judgment, or worse, dependence on other people's reactions to feel validated. Peace does not grow in environments that constantly ask you to explain yourself. It doesn't thrive when you're trying to manage perception. It grows in quiet, consistent choices, in private victories, in moments when you do what's right, not for applause, not for likes, but because it aligns with your truth. There is something deeply grounding about doing hard things without telling anyone, about healing without broadcasting your scars, about growing in silence, because in those moments your motivation becomes pure. You're no longer driven by who's watching. You're driven by who you're becoming. Exposure often seeks approval. Silence builds character. It's in silence that you process, you reflect. You confront the things that noise tries to distract you from. You begin to sort through what matters and what doesn't. What's real and what's just reaction. You don't need the world's opinion to find your path. You need space to listen to yourself. And here's the truth. Not everyone deserves to witness your journey, not because you're hiding, but because your peace is more important than their opinion. Peace requires boundaries, and silence is one of the strongest boundaries you can create. When you choose not to share everything, you are not being secretive. You are being selective. You are recognizing that your growth, your healing, and your transformation do not require a stage. They require presence, patience, stillness, and yes, silence can feel lonely at first, especially if you're used to filling every gap with content, conversation, or connection. But that loneliness fades, and what replaces it is something far more powerful: self-trust. When you learn to sit in silence and still feel whole, you stop depending on the world to fill your emptiness. You begin to understand that peace isn't found out there. It's built in here within you, and once you have that kind of peace, no amount of noise can shake it. One of the greatest forms of strength is quiet strength, the kind that doesn't need to prove anything. That doesn't need to defend, explain, or announce. The kind that simply is. That strength comes from time alone. From choosing not to expose everything. From guarding your spirit and giving yourself the space to evolve without pressure. There's wisdom in holding things close, in building a life that is rich but not loud, in being known by the depth of your presence, not the frequency of your posts. Silence doesn't make you invisible, it makes you powerful. The people who truly see you will see you without constant updates. The ones who matter will understand your silence, not question it, because peace doesn't need to be explained. It just needs to be lived. So, if you're searching for calm, for clarity, for direction, look for it not in the noise of exposure, but in the stillness of your own heart. Sit with yourself, trust the quiet. Listen to what you already know but have been too distracted to hear. And remember, the most powerful growth often happens when no one is watching. The most peaceful people are the ones who learned how to thrive in silence, because they understood that the world doesn't need to see everything for it to be real. That, ladies and gentlemen, is where true peace begins, and that's where it lives. Your story is more than a timeline of events. It's not just the chapters you've lived. It's the meaning you've drawn from them, the growth you've experienced, and the strength you've built through every challenge. And like anything valuable, it deserves to be protected. In a world where everything is shared instantly, we often feel pressure to open up completely, to tell everyone everything, to explain our pain, our progress, our plans. But the more you share your story with those who haven't earned it, the more you risk diluting its power. You risk losing control of it, and when that happens, you lose a piece of your strength. Your story is not content. It's not a post. It's not a headline for someone else's conversation. It's sacred, it's personal, and it's yours. The strength you've earned through struggle, through healing, through resilience. That strength is stored in your story. But that strength can be chipped away when you expose it too freely. Not everyone deserves to hold your story, because not everyone can hold it well. Some people listen just to respond, others listen to judge. Some will use your vulnerability as leverage, not as a bridge. And when you tell your story to the wrong people, you may find yourself questioning your journey, not because your path isn't valid, but because someone else's misunderstanding has shaken your confidence. That's why protecting your story is essential. It doesn't mean hiding. It means choosing. It means having the discernment to decide who is worthy of hearing what you've been through and how it shaped you. It means saying, "This matters to me too much to hand it over to just anyone." Because once you've shared something, you can't take it back. Once someone has access to your inner world, they have influence. They can shape how you see your own past. They can make you feel ashamed of moments you once felt proud of. They can plant doubt where there was once resolve. Not because they're always malicious, but because they haven't earned the right to hold something so personal. You protect your strength by protecting your story, by recognizing that you are the narrator, not the audience. And you get to choose how your story is told, when it's told, and to whom. There is also power in waiting. In holding your story close until it's fully healed, fully processed, fully yours. Sometimes we rush to share in the middle of the process, hoping that external validation will speed up internal healing. But healing doesn't work that way. Growth happens in private. Strength is built in solitude. When you give yourself the space to own your story before you share it, you reclaim control over your life. And when the time comes to share, you do it from a place of power, not pain. You speak not to be understood, but to offer understanding. You're no longer asking people to validate you. You're inviting them into something meaningful. That's the difference between storytelling and oversharing. One is rooted in intention, the other in impulse. Your story should be shared with care, because it holds the blueprint of your identity. It reflects what you've overcome, what you've learned, and what you stand for. And when you treat it with respect, others are more likely to do the same. You are not obligated to make your story public to be strong. In fact, some of the strongest people are the ones who carry their story with quiet dignity, who let their actions, their presence, and their integrity tell the tale. Protecting your story also means protecting your energy. Every time you retell something painful to someone who doesn't truly listen, you reopen the wound. You relive it, and eventually it drains you. But when you choose your audience wisely, your story becomes a tool for connection, for inspiration, for purpose. You didn't survive everything you went through just to let someone else diminish it. You didn't build all this strength to let someone question its validity. You've earned every piece of who you are, and no one gets to rewrite that. So be proud of your story. Guard it, share it only when it empowers you, not when it empties you. And remember that your story isn't just what happened to you, it's what you did with it. That's where the strength is, and when you protect that, you protect your power. That, ladies and gentlemen, is how you stay strong, not by showing everything, but by knowing what's too valuable to be placed in the wrong hands. Your story is your strength, and it is worth protecting.